What's the extent, sir, of Iran's support for the Houthis as far as the kingdom is concerned?
The extent is broad and absolutely critical to the war effort. The ballistic missiles and drone technology is entirely of Iranian origin, which has so far resulted in well over 400 drones being launched across the border, hitting targets such as fuel depots, airports, other civilian targets. And we believe that without the support of Iran and its advisors that are on the ground, the Houthis could not be launching these attacks against Saudi civilian infrastructure, and they would be constrained in their attempts to continue to attack other parts of Yemen and take over the country.
Along with Israel and the Emirates, Saudi Arabia has said very clearly that it wants any new deal that the US might cut with Iran to include curbs on its ballistic missile program and its support of militia groups across the Middle East, not least in Yemen. How confident are you that Iran would agree to those terms, or that they will even form part of these early discussions, which, as we understand it, are now going on behind closed doors?
We believe it's critically important that these issues be addressed. We see these deliveries of ballistic missiles to the Houthis, ballistic missiles and ballistic missile technology to the Houthis and other non-state actors as a critical source of instability in the region. Also, of course, general support for militias and non-state actors. All of this is really what is causing this region to continue in a cycle of tension and of potential escalation. The only way we are going to have a peaceful region, a secure region, is if we address these concerns. And we certainly believe that it's critically important that Iran step up and make a commitment to regional stability and security by pulling back from supporting these non-state actors.
Well, you've repeatedly said that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states should be fully consulted during any renegotiation of the JCPOA. President Macron of France said in January he'd like to see Saudi Arabia directly involved in talks. Tehran has made it crystal clear that that is not up for negotiation, that will not happen. What assurances, if any, are you getting from the Biden administration and other Europeans that the kingdom will have its concerns raised during any future negotiations of the JCPOA?
So let me be clear. The countries that are most at risk from a nuclear-armed Iran are the countries in the region, including, of course, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the GCC states. So it's entirely logical that we should be part of the discussion and part of the dialogue. And we hear from our European and American partners that they understand that the concerns of the countries of the region must be addressed and we must have a role in those discussions and in those negotiations. We are in a dialogue now with our international partners as to how our role and our concerns in those discussions can be addressed. We think we should be at the table. As I said, we are the countries most at threat, and therefore it's only right that we be at the table. And of course, Iran has repeatedly said that it's interested in having a dialogue with its neighbors about regional security. And what is not an issue of regional security if not the nuclear issue? So if Iran wants to have a dialogue with us, that is fine, but we think we should have that dialogue as part of the discussions vis-a-vis the JCPOA, and that can then help to allay our concerns to a great deal. If we are at the table, we will see, we hope that we will see an Iran that comes back into compliance and that agrees to address the concerns that we have, both about the deficiencies in the previous JCPOA structure, but also, of course, regional stability and ballistic missiles and other issues.
Bottom line, how realistic is it that you can be at the same table as the Iranians on any JCPOA negotiations?
Yeah, I think it's entirely realistic.
Fascinating. The US has said that it will ensure that the kingdom's defences are robust, that it can defend itself as a sovereign nation, just as it also, of course, says it needs to recalibrate its relationship with you. I wonder what you might envisage now as a new regional security architecture, and how significant a role might the US play going forward in that new regional security architecture?
I think the US has vital interest in the region and will continue to have vital interest in the region. So I believe that the United States will continue to be actively involved in ensuring the security and stability of the region. That said, we in the region have said for some time now that we want to play a greater role in ensuring our own security and the security of the broader region. And we are ready to step up, and we are willing to step up. But we want to do so in cooperation and coordination with our international partners and primarily, of course, the United States. So we're going to have that dialogue and that discussion. And I think it's something that we are very much open to, because, as I said, we've always wanted or we've for some time wanted to work together to play a greater role in our own security. So that's I think that's the direction we're going.
Do you seek a rapprochement with Tehran at this point?
We seek for Iran to stop its activities that are causing instability in the region, its aggressive behaviors. Of course, if it were willing to do so, that would open up the doors to not just rapprochement, but even cooperation. But we cannot have a rapprochement without addressing these very, very severe threats to regional stability and security, from Lebanon to Syria to Iraq to Yemen, as well as, of course, activities within states in the region, including Saudi Arabia, of supplying terrorists with bomb-making equipment, things like that. So if Iran is willing to step back from that, willing to treat the region, the countries in the region with respect and deal with it, or try and foster its influence through normal channels, through state-to-state activity, then I think that's something we can hope for. It's certainly something we would like to see, because in the end, Iran is part of the region and it's going to stay part of the region. We in the kingdom want to focus on our own development. We want to focus on our ambitious economic reform program. We want to focus on delivering sustainable prosperity for the Saudi people. And that can, of course, only be strengthened by stability in the region and cooperation with Iran. But that requires Iran to change its behavior.
Saudi Arabia's ambassador to Beirut calling on political parties in Lebanon to urgently agree on a new government and save the country from financial ruin after what has been months of political paralysis. Now, Hezbollah is only expanding its role in Lebanon in the wake of what has been this vacuum in leadership. What role, if any, does the kingdom plan to play in Lebanon going forward to restore some sense of political stability?
Lebanon's future is in the hand of the Lebanese. We hope that the Lebanese and the Lebanese leaderships and the Lebanese body politic will take a real serious look at the situation Lebanon is, and come together to embrace true reforms, true political reforms, economic reforms that can address the challenges that Lebanon face and can deliver sustainable solutions for the future. Unless the Lebanese political leadership is willing to do that, I fear that Lebanon is heading into ever more dangerous circumstances. And the status quo in Lebanon is no longer workable. And the kingdom doesn't feel it appropriate to continue to subsidize or continue to support the status quo, which has, as you mentioned, delivered a non-state actor, Hezbollah, who has a de facto rule over the veto over everything that happens in that country and has control over its key infrastructure and things like that, while the political class does very little to address the challenges that the ordinary Lebanese people face. So whether it's endemic corruption or mismanagement, all of these things. So Lebanon needs a true reform agenda, and we hope that the Lebanese politicians can come together and embrace such an agenda. And if they do, we will stand there to support them.
Does Saudi Arabia provide that reform agenda? Saudi Arabia, of course, has supported him in the past. Are you prepared to do that going forward?
We are prepared to support a very robust and real reform agenda. We hope that Saad al-Hariri and others can deliver that. If we see a true reform agenda from whomever it is in Lebanon, we will stand behind that. We are not standing behind individuals in Lebanon. We will be ready to stand behind Lebanon as long as the Lebanese political class takes real steps to address the problems that Lebanon faces.
What is Saudi Arabia's position on Syria today? And are there now plans to engage with President Bashar al-Assad?
There is a process through, which is shepherded by the United Nations, where the opposition is engaged with the government of Bashar al-Assad. We support that process. We hope that the government of Bashar al-Assad will take the appropriate steps to enable a political resolution, because that's the only way forward in Syria. We need to stabilize Syria, and that requires compromise. It requires compromise by the Syrian government, and it requires a coming together of the government and the opposition to be able to move forward in a political process that can deliver that necessary stability. And we will continue to support that UN process.
Do you support the UAE, who are calling for an end to sanctions on the regime in Syria, sanctions imposed under the Caesar Act?
The Caesar Act, of course, is something that the US took in regards to its position on Syria. And I think the important thing is that we address the core issue, which is finding a political resolution. Without that, we are not going to be able to move forward. So we're focused on moving the political process forward and then supporting the US, the UN envoy and his efforts to make that happen.